Thank you for joining us for this 2025 mock draft special. It's the first of many. I know John's happy to hear that. As we give you guys what you always ask for, and that's mock drafts. Everybody loves a mock draft, and we have our first official mock draft that's already posted on the Ourlads.com website. We'll have a link in the description of this video in case you haven't seen it yet, and you can check that out. And you could also go to the site and order. This is last year's guide, but you can order the Ourlads 2025 draft guide, and it'll be ready. Usually it gets to your houses around what, John, the first 10 days of April?
First 10 days of April. It's within that ballpark.
And if you don't know who John is, John Cooper, of course, is a general manager here. Is it acting general manager, or is it still assistant general manager? Associate general manager, excuse me.
Dan Shanka is still a general manager. Okay. And Dan and I had an unbelievably good conversation last week.
Okay.
About a lot of different things. So
excellent.
He's watching film for me now. He's starting to watch some guys. So be careful, Dave.
Did you tell? Did you tell Dan? Well, we haven't spoken to him since, but hopefully you'll get an opportunity the next time. Okay.
No, I'm hoping. Yeah, right. We'll see. Yeah. I know I'm going to get. Oh, he has asked me that already.
What's that
question about Shedeur? He's asked me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you could record that, that'd be great. We really appreciate that.
All right, I'll see what I can do.
Yeah. Dave Syvertsen, of course, also here, senior scout Ourlads. How's it going, Dave?
Great, guys. Happy to be sitting here with you guys. Mock drafts, we all have a love-hate with them, but at the end of the day, we care less about how accurate these are because we can't predict what 32 teams will do. It's a good opportunity for us to create some conversation and talk ball.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's get started. And I'm going to pop up actually going right to the source, the Ourlads.com website. This is where you can see, of course, right here. Matter of fact, this just got posted. Or this was just when I accidentally, because this got posted yesterday, right?
Yeah. It got posted a couple of days ago. Then we had to make a couple little edits here and there. So just some grammatical errors. But yeah, it was posted Monday.
Did Peggy edit? Did she proof this?
I proofed it 3 times. So if you guys find anything, I get the blame. Right. Nobody else.
I won't tell this time.
If you find any mistakes out there, any of our viewers, just please let us know in the comment section. We'll pass it along to Peggy. She's in charge. Also, we have our rankings are out now. What is it? The top 32, John?
The top 32, yeah. And it was a tough one because I'd say there's maybe about from maybe 22 on down. These guys down to about 40. They all could be there or not be there. I think we kind of feel there's maybe 20 bona fide first round grades. And then after that, it's, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm looking here. We'll see 5, 6. Where the heck are the quarterbacks? 8, 9, 10. Oh, there's a quarterback. But of course, that has nothing to do with the mock draft. And we know it's not going to have anything to do with the real draft either. Because the way that it is, NFL.
Well, and just one comment. The reality is that quarterbacks are coveted, and we've got 2 quarterbacks in the top 32, and right now 2 in the mock draft. Chances are, though, will be 3. And chances are those quarterbacks could go. I'm not saying they will, 1, 2. What we'll end up doing is when we finally do our last mock draft, it's going to be what we think. If we were drafting for that team, what we do, not necessarily what, the predictors of the drafts are going to do.
All right. Well, can't wait for that one. That means we're right around the corner for the draft, but this is just the beginning of the offseason. It hasn't really, even though it has officially begun for many teams, we still have 4 teams that are in the playoffs. And when it's all said and done, which will be in the next few weeks, it's really underway. So we still have teams that haven't even named their head coaches or GMs yet. So we still have a long way to go. Senior Bowl, that's the week before the Super Bowl.
Yep. Next week, I'll be heading down. We have a couple other guys from Ourlads. Hayden, one of our scouts, will be heading down. I actually am going to be leaving first thing Monday morning, so I'll be there Monday through Thursday night.
And we're going to hope, obviously you got to get down there first, check things out, the layout, but hopefully we're going to get daily reports from you that we're going to be able to post here on the channel. But, first things first, get down there, lay of the land and all that. And hopefully we'll be able to hook up with you because that'd be great giving us some daily updates. So
we've got, like I said, we got guys down there, and I would go myself this year, but I'm recovering from surgery. So I want to go. I can't. So.
Pray for good weather because that
could be a real problem at that particular facility.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good it wasn't this week because aren't they getting a storm this week in the South?
I think they're getting a storm this week.
Yeah. So it's good. It's good. If that was next week, that'd be pretty bad. So
last time I looked, it looks pretty good next week.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah. Because snowstorms in that of the country, that's pretty abnormal. All right. So let's go ahead first. And as we just said, even though we have a quarterback ranking 10th overall, the draft says the quarterback likely is going to go a lot higher than that. And we have a quarterback at number 1, Dave, Cam Ward. So I guess right away, the first question is why Cam Ward over Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah. So I do want to put it out there that I used John's top 32 for almost the entire draft. Like if I came up with a position and there was a right value and I would go to his ranks and his stacks at any position and use that. And the quarterback, the number 1 pick to me, it was a little bit of a unique situation. I wrestled back and forth a little bit. I tried to project with, this is a guess into the dark about what Brian Callahan would want to work with at the quarterback position compared to some of the quarterbacks that he's had a lot of success with. And Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford are the 2 quarterbacks he's had a ton of success with. They just hired a GM from the Kansas City front office. And then I look at that style quarterback, and this is going to be a biased, decision-making in the NFL. It's biased towards what has previously worked for these guys respectively. And Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, very similar graded quarterbacks, but they get there very different ways. They're very different players. They have a couple of same holes, especially against how they deal with pressure in terms of their movement. But Cam Ward, to me, has a lot more pure arm talent, and he has a lot more developmental component to his game. A former 0-star recruit that threw the ball 12 times a game in high school, that went to Incarnate Word to start off his career, where Shedeur Sanders has been groomed to play quarterback since he was a kid, and Deion's been his coach since he was in high school. So I just think that Brian Callahan and the decision maker from Kansas City will view Cam Ward as, hey, that's our kind of quarterback, even though that they're very similarly graded.
Yeah, and Cam also, John, happens to have one of these knacks for, even though he can get you in trouble with some really, questionable decisions, he's also one of those quarterbacks that can find his way back, especially if you're down late in the game. He can rally his team and go from a bad play to some really great plays.
Yeah, he's just from my perspective, I agree with Dave. The pocket presence of either one of these guys is not great. Cam Ward's problems are different than Shedeur's. Shedeur's takes a lot of hits. But the arm talent is definitely there. He's going to have to work on some things mechanically and accuracy wise. But it's a tough call, as far as that goes.
Okay. Well, let's say they don't go quarterback, and I hope for Tennessee fans they don't. I hope they're smart enough and they can, especially with the new GM. Why not just, hey, you know what? We're going with the long plan. And if I don't think the quarterback is the best prospect right now, I'm not going to go that way. And if he doesn't, and he decides to go defense, do you think Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? Do you think those would definitely be on?
That's a great question. I had a long conversation yesterday with somebody who's very close to the Tennessee Titans, and he says, I don't have a clue at this point what Tennessee is going to do. And he could see, it's kind of like, I feel very strongly both ways. I stand firmly in the middle. It's kind of like, they could trade down to get more picks. They have a boatload of needs. It's not just quarterback, but they do need a quarterback. So, trading down makes sense. If indeed they decided to stay there and take a pick, I think they could go either way, but I think Hunter makes a lot of sense because one of the things, the comment I got yesterday in my conversation was that Hunter is a two-way, bona fide, legitimate two-way player who will play two ways in the NFL. He's not going to play 90 snaps, but he's going to be an elite performer on defense, maybe as an outside corner. He's a little slender frame guy, but he has tremendous spatial awareness. He's a great zone defender. He's got great ball skills, obviously, both sides of the ball. And with today's NFL, 11 personnel is what people are playing. So 3 wide receivers are on the field most of the time, and most teams are playing nickel 70% of the time. So you're going to have 3 corners or the equivalent of 3 corners. Sometimes it's a safety at nickel, but you're going to have 5 defensive backs. You need a lot of those guys. Travis Hunter in some ways saves you a position spot. If you have that, and they'll find a way. The NFL team that takes him will find a way to use him on offense and defense. Won't be 90 snaps. They'll get a blow here and there. Chances are, they'll be part of a receiver rotation and possibly play outside corner, and maybe in certain base defense situations, depending upon what they're doing on defense, they might be off the field.
But you think he's going to be drafted primarily as a cornerback, or it just depends on which team it is?
It's going to agree exactly. It's going to depend on which team it is, and and I asked my friend who does stuff with the Titans. He said, I don't know. I really don't know. They could trade down. They could take Carter too. Carter could be a pick. He's a viable player. You can see there are the next 2 guys that are coming up in our mock draft. But they're very good players. I know Dave and I have watched them as corners. We've watched them as receivers, and we both agree that, hey, this is a great football player.
Yeah, I mean, I could have sworn that I've heard many people talk about, well, again, zeroing in on the way you're supposed to build a football team. It's supposed to be from the in out. Obviously, quarterback, but you would think if you're building a team that doesn't have talent, Tennessee has no talent, then wouldn't it make more sense to go with the edge rusher than the corner or the receiver? Guys,
well, the only reason that they might do that is because you could potentially save a roster spot.
Okay.
By having a 2-way player there, and you could do some things later on. This draft is a defensive draft. I think Dave and I both agree on that. You're going to get very good edge rushers down the line. You're also going to get corners down the line. Maybe not as many corners, but you're going to get defensive linemen. Front 7 guys are going to be there, in this draft.
All right, let's talk about the top offensive lineman on our mock, and that's Will Campbell and Dave. The Patriots. This is a team that can go a variety of ways. They can definitely go with either one of those 2 players we just spoke about. They don't need a quarterback, so that's good for them. And they could also go with a wide receiver because we know the Patriots have had all sorts of bad luck with first-round draft pick wide receivers, yet you would think that this particular one that's on the top of our board is as can't miss as you can get, that they can't possibly blow that one. So why don't you go ahead and just do it and give Drake May a weapon? But you have Will Campbell right now slotted in at number 4. So a couple of questions. What do you think about that possibility of going wide receiver? And also, is Will Campbell definitely the top offensive tackle on the draft?
Yeah, so good questions there. Coin flip, wide receiver, offensive line. No matter what, you're making this pick to support Drake May. And we've seen so many franchises fail at supporting young quarterbacks and their entire plan, and they have a ton of money to spend. They have more money than everybody in free agency. My guess right now is that they will be the front runner for T. Higgins if he becomes available. But no matter whether he comes available or not, there will be a good wide receiver available in free agency. And I think that's the move that the Patriots should pursue in free agency in terms of adding a pass catcher for Drake May. Will Campbell, to me, is he the best tackle in this class? I think he's the safest left tackle in this class. I wouldn't say he has the highest ceiling. I mean, what Simmons started to put on tape prior to the injury at Oregon, I was ready to say, hey, this guy might be the best. His best tape is better than everyone. We just haven't seen enough of it to really put him in that label. Campbell, to me, is a 3-year starter in the from LSU, SEC, a lot of quality tape, but he's limited. There are some length concerns with him, and that can rear its ugly head at the next level. Your worst case scenario is that he turns into Peter Skoronski and he turns into a starting guard, but he's got some power shortcomings. And I don't know if he can truly move guys off the line as an interior run blocker. So to me, you draft Campbell, you put him at left tackle, and you beef up the wide receiver room via free agency, and also at the top of the second round. Very similar template to what the Chargers did in last year's draft. You take the offensive lineman in the top 5, you get your wide receiver at the top of round 2.
All right. Mason Graham. Boy, we're getting a lot of activity from our video on Mason Graham on the channel. And that's because a lot of fans know that he is as good as it gets at this position that we've seen in the last few years, John. Right now, we have him going to Jacksonville. Tell us how good Mason Graham can be.
Well, the thing with Mason Graham is he's got talent. He's a talented football player as far as his technique, as far as his athletic ability. Better than that, he is a extreme high motor player. He's a violent with his hands, and he never stops playing. I mean, he'll make plays downfield. He'll make plays across the field. He can take on blocks. He can stack and shed. This is a very good, solid football player. If there's a weakness, his first step quickness might not be the best, but he's what you call we used to call try-hard guy, but he's a lot more than that. He's also very talented, excellent hand placement. He could slide down the line. He gets off of blocks as quick as anyone I've seen, and he can chase. The motor never stops. And, there's clips of him making a play on a receiver who made a cutback 15 yards downfield because the motor never stops. It's hard to find a guy like that has that kind of second effort. And that for that reason alone, teams are going to love him. And I definitely see a top 10 pick.
Now, Jacksonville has quite a bit of needs as well. They did draft 2 defensive tackles last year in round 2 and round 4, including second-round pick Mason Smith. So you don't think that that's going to deter them? We understand Mason Graham's a completely different option because of this. He would be their number 1 guy for $10, 10 years. But when you invest a second and a fourth in those positions, you don't think that that should deter them from drafting Graham?
Not at the top of the draft like this. If he's, Mason Graham is potentially a special player, and you don't pass on special talent because you might have a couple of average to above average players at that position. Mason Graham is a game changer if he hits his ceiling, and you combine that with Travon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen. I mean, this is a potentially elite level defensive line if Mason Graham hits that ceiling. And if you look at all of the elite defensive lines that are still playing, you look at Kansas City, Philadelphia, they are so deep. They run 7-8 deep. To me, you can never have enough defensive line talent, especially if one of these guys can project to be a special player.
Now,
the other thing with him is, everybody in the NFL wants somebody that can not only push the pocket, but can get off blocks and chase quarterbacks from the interior. Makes sense. Quarterbacks get the ball out of their hands quick. You want to have somebody in the quarterback's face. Graham can do that. He's got that ability.
Now, by the way, I haven't seen any of these picks. So as a Jet fan, I'm very happy to see Tyler Warren here. I know there was a lot of talk last year about Bowers going to the Jets. I never thought that would be the case, and I was right. They went offensive line, and I think that's the way they should have. Whether or not they should go at Warren now, I haven't looked into it enough yet at this point, even as a Jet fan, because they need some help in a few different areas, but they also need a general manager first, as well as a head coach. But Tyler Warren's a special tight end. How does he compare to Bowers, John? Dave?
Oh man, much bigger, much more physical. But what the similarity to Bowers is that they can help your offense in so many different ways. You can hand them the ball, you could split them out wide, you could put them in line, you could put them in the slot. Brock Bowers had one of the best rookie seasons I've ever seen, and all pro. First, he led the league in pretty much almost everything from tight ends, not just rookies. And Tyler Warren can have that kind of impact. I don't think he's as twitchy and as effective after the catch, simply because he's higher hipped. He's a little bit longer. He doesn't change direction as well. But in the same breath, this guy is 200. He's sick, a real 6'6", 260 pounds. And he could be much more effective in contested situations and in line. This guy is a good blocker. I mean, you don't draft a top 10 tight end because he's good at blocking, but it's nice to have icing on the cake sometimes. And this is a guy that will improve the physicality of your team up front. When I watched him and Theo Johnson last year at Penn State, this was the guy that said, this is a real NFL tight end here. I like Theo Johnson, but I thought this guy was immediately better. And I put him in the preseason top 32, and he exceeded those expectations. And I think we were higher on him than anyone coming into the year. This is a guy that you can, I wouldn't say build an offense around, but a guy that can be your number 2 option. And I think he's an immediate, what I compare him to is TJ Hawkinson, who was the 8th overall pick in 2019. And, he has had a couple of injuries, but when he's on, he's a guy that can change your offense. And that's where I think Tyler Warren is headed towards.
Yeah, if they keep Adams, and of course they have Wilson, and if they bring in Warren, and they have Breece Hall, and Allen, and come on,
how do you not win? How do you not win with that?
It's up to making sure that you have a coaching staff that knows how to coach.
Yes,
it's been a problem in New York for a while.
Yes.
So, this is going to be a very good class for tight ends.
Yes.
So you can get a tight end in this draft all the way through probably to 3rd, 4th, 5th round if you want one.
Yep. I like the tight ends and running backs. I mean, I think this is, I keep saying this as long as someone wants to listen to me. I think the running back group is going to be special that is coming out this year. And the tight ends will be way above average. And these are 2 positions, guys, that the league is saying it's not a premium position.
Yeah.
As much value. I'm like, I don't care. If these guys are going to help me win games, I'm taking them wherever I want to take them. I have not fallen victim to that school of thought that you can't take a certain position at a certain point in the draft. I just don't believe in it.
Malachi Starks, John, top safety off the board here with Carolina. And there's no doubt about his talent. There's another really good safety that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But Starks has definitely been the man as far as the top safety in the nation. And this would be a good spot for him, right?
Yeah, he's a do-it-all player. And, I'm going to kind of speed it up here a little bit in terms of so we get through all these picks. He's definitely, he can play safety. He can play nickel. He's had some reps at corner. He's an excellent athlete. He makes plays all over the field. He's very good processor. He's excellent at processing route concepts, pattern pressure. He can react to overlapping zones extremely well. He's got excellent range with the ball in the air. He can play 1 high. He can play 2 high. He can play in the box. He can play man-to-man. And the only thing is he's got a little bit of a light frame, but he's still got very good size. This is a very, very good safety who is also an asset in run support. He can get off blocks and he can make plays. He can avoid blocks. He can slip blocks. This is a really good safety.
Yeah. There's not like much he can't do, which makes him a top 10 pick. Ted McMillan, top receiver off the board. He's at 9 here, Dave, but he could go as high as 4.
Yeah. That's where I think the window opens for McMillan. It would be at 4 to New England. Unbelievable ball skills, 6'5", 212, volleyball background, which I love reading about these guys' backgrounds and how trying to tie that to the gridiron, because his ability to high point the football, which at the end of the day, that's what volleyball players do at the apex of their leap. That's when they come in contact with the ball. And it's a skill that some wide receivers do not have. Good wide receivers as well. McMillan gets up there and he's the winner in most one-on-one situations, as long as the ball is put somewhat close to where it needs to be. Also a nasty dude to take down after the catch. Very tough. He uses his weight. He feels the defense. He knows where to go. The one question that we should get an answer to in the coming months is, how fast is he? Is he a 4.45 guy, or is he a 4.6 guy? Because when I watch his tape, I see both sometimes. I don't see an explosive receiver, and that's the only reason I have a little asterisk next to him as a prospect. I love him as a possession type. Michael Thomas, maybe, ironically, going to the Saints in this mock draft. But for me to put him in that tier with Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison from last year, I need to see his run. I need to see him run.
All right. Well, I think we have 4 receivers in the first round?
Top of my head, I think it's 4. Yeah.
Okay. We'll get to them.
It might be more.
Yeah. When it's all said and done. Yeah.
If you count,
sorry. We have 5 because we have a surprise at towards the back end of round 1.
Okay. All right. Will Johnson, of course, he missed half the season, or at least about that, with Michigan. Didn't play when things really.
You're going to talk about Kelvin Banks, the tackle?
No. I mean, I can't talk about every player, but if you want to talk about it, we can.
Okay, fine. No, not a problem.
So Will Johnson, we know how good he is. He just hasn't been healthy. So, we haven't seen him for a while. And Michigan was struggling earlier this year. So nobody's paying attention to Michigan this year. But how can you not remember that as soon as he stepped foot at Michigan, very first game, true freshman, he's been a star. John.
Yeah, now you're talking about his foot injury? Is that what you're talking about?
No, just ever since he stepped foot on the field as a true freshman,
right,
he's been a star. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't pick up on that. Well, here's the irony of it, is that he had a foot injury. That was part of his problem this year. He played through it quite a bit, but he did have some problems. But he's a remarkable combination. He's got size, length, athletic skill. He's experienced in multiple coverage and techniques. One of the things that NFL teams want to know these days is because of their limited practice times and things they can do. They want to know what they played in. And this guy has played in a lot of schemes. He's played man concepts. He's played outside corner and zone concepts along with hard corner. He's a very good hard corner with reroute skill. And he's played both press and off man. In off coverage, he's very smooth with ability to maintain his cushion. He's a very good lateral run, very good ability to flip his hips. And he's got the speed to cover deep. He stays in phase on deep routes, whether it's zone or man, whether he's got a man turn or a zone turn. It's an easy, smooth reaction. And he's very good on route concepts. He can close voids in outside zones, especially the short zones. And he's a dangerous guy when somebody's coming across on a drag route from the other side. He can make some big hits. He attacks the catch points, and he's got a great plant and drive, click and close, whatever you want to call it. He's had some inconsistencies, whether some of that is because of injury or not in terms of ball reactions. But, I don't see a whole lot of weakness. His skills will play in the NFL. 6'2", 202 pounds, really, really solid corner.
If Travis Hunter was strictly a corner, would he still be ahead of Will Johnson?
Slightly. They'd be right there. Different kind, a little bit different player. I mean, Hunter is very, very heady in terms of his football IQ, and but he has great speed, fluid movements. They're both very good players. A little bit different. Johnson's the big corner. Some teams really covet that big corner. And so if that's what you're looking for, Johnson's your guy.
And keep in mind, of course, Ward is a free agent, one of their corners, the 49ers. I really like that pick in round 2 last year, Renardo Green. I think he's going to be a good one for them. So if you can put Will Johnson on the opposite side, they could be in really good shape down the road. So we know San Francisco had a ton of injuries this year. And they might have a pretty volatile offseason. There could be a lot going on in San Francisco this season. All right, there's the first running back off the board. Big surprise. Ashton Jeanty, Dave. Jeanty really caught our eye early this season with some, especially against Oregon, and he hasn't looked back. Almost won the Heisman. That's how big his season was. Talk about how he compares to other great running backs that we've seen come out of the draft the last few years.
Yeah, he's my personal prototype at running back, and it's not necessarily about the 40 time. It's about his size and his running style. He's sometimes we see a running back that's Derrick Henry size, for example, or Brandon Jacobs, if you remember him. and you're like, oh man, that guy's got a lot of size. We should upgrade him. To me, I prefer the running backs that are built a little lower to the ground, but they still carry 215 to 225 pounds because they're really hard to get to the ground. And Ashton Jeanty, his ability to break tackles and gain yards after contact, don't quote me on the number, but I'm pretty sure he had 1,750 yards after contact. No other running back rushed for that this year in total.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's, we could talk about the strength of schedule, but his 2 games against Oregon and Penn State, 2 real good defenses loaded with NFL talent, he more than held his own. He averaged almost 6 yards a carry, scored 3 touchdowns against those guys. So, I mean, Jeanty to me is a much different back than what Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs brought to the table. Not better or worse, just different. This guy's a grinder. He's going to, you could give him the ball 30 times a game, and he's going to come out on the other side, still breaking tackles late in the game. Other than Penn State, he's had a really good year with not fumbling the football. He can handle all the beating and hang on to that ball. I think he's an underrated pass catcher. We saw more of that in 2022 than we did in 2023. I mean, I hate to say this name and put this expectation on him, but I see some Damian Tomlinson in the way he runs and his contact balance and the ability to run low to the ground, but also incredibly quick and explosive. So to me, this is the floor for Jeanty. I considered giving him to the Raiders at the top at number 6.
Yeah, you know what? I would agree with that. I think that's a possibility too.
Yeah.
His GPS speed is also very good.
Yep.
I don't have the exact number, but it is good.
Great kid too. I think what the NFL coaches and owners are going to fall in love with this kid. This is a Saquon Barkley, face of your franchise type.
And we also know that no matter what the Cowboys do this offseason, especially the draft, they will be taking a running back. So they didn't do. Now maybe it won't be in the first. It should, but who knows? They could be putting a blockbuster deal together after Sanders becomes their coach to go get his son. And then, that's a whole big other story, but they need a running back. And so it makes a lot of sense with him on the board to go to the Cowboys in his first mock draft. And I believe there are 2 running backs in the top 32 rankings, the initial rankings. Hampton is the other. Henderson, did he barely make the grade? I know we talked quite a bit about whether or not Travion Henderson would be a first-round guy.
He's right below. He's right below that top 32, and okay. I went back and forth when I did it. I had a hard time with from 22 on down. I had a hard time, and I could see Henderson going late in the first round. I could see that.
All right, Colts draft another defensive tackle, Walter Nolan. And matter of fact, these next 2 picks, defensive picks, Walter Nolan, defensive tackle, and Nick Scouton. Going to the Falcons as an edge rusher. We know the Falcons need pass rushers. There is no question about that. Nolan, John, talk a little bit about the big differences between Nolan and, say, someone like Mason Graham.
Yeah, there's somewhat of a difference. I mean, Graham is a unique player with the ability to move with that kind of size. Now, Nolan's got good size, but he is very versatile. He's played all over the front. He's powerful. He's athletic. He's got a quick first step. He can shoot. He's violent with his hands to separate from blockers. And he's also an excellent anchor in the run game. It's hard to find a guy like that. He rarely stays blocked. Good lateral ability, can penetrate. He can disrupt. And he's a pass rusher. He's played 5 technique and even outside. He's played all over the place. And he has enough juice to turn the corner coming off the edge and chase the quarterback down. He's also flashed some counter moves against an overset, and if you play him on the interior, he can bull rush or stun a gap. He get a little high on blocks. He seems to run out of gas a little bit, not much, but he's the kind of defensive tackle that NFL teams covet these days. They want somebody that can rush the passer from the inside. I think a 3-4 team might consider that. The type of 3-4 team that Seattle and Baltimore and the Chargers might consider a guy like that to line up as a 5 technique in the base defense and kick down inside to a 3, in your nickel package, which would be the majority of the time. And I could see Nolan fitting into that type of 3-4 defense. But he's also going to be a really solid 4-3, 4-2, type defensive tackle.
And then
he's a good player.
And then just a couple of picks later, more defensive tackles. Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon. That's 4 defensive tackles off the board in the top 17. That's a little unusual, isn't it?
Well, the one thing that I've been looking at these defensive tackles since last spring at the end, because I got a list of these guys, and I honestly think there's 28 draftable defensive tackles. I think this might be the deepest position in the draft, and some of these guys are going, in the first round, which is unusual, but I really believe the NFL is looking for defensive tackles. They're starting to realize that quarterbacks getting rid of the ball as quick as they are with some of their schemes, having someone right in the quarterback's face that's quick enough to get off a block and beat a guard. And some of these guards are a little slower of foot because, they're run blockers. And now the NFL is, looking for quick guys that can play inside. So you're going to find a variety of types of defensive tackles playing inside. In fact, I got a feeling we're going to talk about another one in that variety coming up.
Yeah, I mean, do you see a big difference at all, Dave, between, and again, we know he's the guy. He's going to be number one as far as DTs. But when we get to this other group of defensive tackles, the second wave, do you see a big difference, or do you think they could probably all be picked, first? I mean, second, third, fourth, fifth.
Yeah, I think that's where they are. It's Graham, and I wouldn't even say the gap between Graham and the rest of these guys is that big. I mean, it's notable. It's there. He's definitely the best defensive tackle in the class, but some of these guys had a lot more production in college than Mason Graham, especially against the pass. And but what stands out to me with this defensive tackle class, especially when you're trying to put these guys on teams in a mock draft, they're massive. It's a lot of big bodies in this class. And you have a lot of teams. The Bengals are I'm looking at Derek Harmon right now. They need a lot of run defense help. They lost DJ Reader, and they were terrible without DJ Reader versus DJ Reader on the field when he was in Cincinnati. And, I look at Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, 2 guys from Michigan, very reminiscent of what we saw in 2019 with Christian Wilkins and Dexter Lawrence coming out, where Christian Wilkins, he had all the highlight tapes and a little bit more pass rush success in college. But Kenneth Grant and Dexter Lawrence, much bigger, much more physical. If they can develop some rush moves, they can be guys that can be all pros. And, to me, how they stack 2 through 5 is going to be different team to team based on what they want from that defensive tackle. Are they looking for pass rush upside? Are they looking for a run defender? Are they looking for, a guy that's going to 1 gap, 2 gap, A gap, B gap? I mean, where do you want to put these guys? That will dictate the order. It's like Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. As grades, they're very similar, if not the same. It's what kind of player are you trying to develop?
Talking about Grant and just in general, the trend in the NFL is seeing an uptick in run offense. Teams are running the ball. The good teams, the Saquon Barkleys, Derrick Henrys, whoever gets Aston Genty is going to use that kid, and there's some other running backs. And there's an influx of that. So you got to stop the run. You're still going to have to stop the run, and that's where a guy like Kenneth Grant comes in. He's physical. He can knock somebody back into the he's a push guy in the pass rush right now. I don't know if he'll ever develop into anything more than that, but collapsing the pocket is what allows edge rushers to get to the quarterback, and he can do that. I don't see an escape guy, necessarily. I don't see a great lateral movement guy, but he's not terrible. The thing he does is he will hold the point and more. He will knock a guard. If that guard is not physical, if that guard doesn't have a good anchor, if that guard doesn't have good balance, he's going to knock him back in the backfield, and he's going to make a play, because of that. So it creates problems for offenses to have a guy like that.
And by the way, Simmons, talk a little bit about him, Dave, because I know he's still kind of a mystery to a lot of people. Being somebody that is relatively new to Ohio State and the injury and all that. And by the way, with Seattle, I don't know if the fans want to see an offensive tackle. I know they might say, I know the offensive line maybe needs help, but they did draft 3 linemen last year. They supposedly, I don't know if they think they've got their 2 guys. I know they do a cross. Lucas, I'm assuming that's where you think that they need an improvement there. But yeah, talk about Simmons, because he's a little bit of an unknown.
Yeah, I mean, he actually started off at San Diego State. You know, this is not the Ohio State lineman that came in as a 5-star recruit and started for 3 years. There aren't many San Diego guys that start off at San Diego State that you end up being first-round picks. And like I said earlier, I think he's got a shot at being the top tackle in this draft. You know, he what I like about him is that he can play both sides. I think he's got the athleticism to start on the left side. I don't think you're moving Charles Cross, though. The question I have with the Seahawks in general, we could talk about past draft picks, but until you show me a starting group of 5 that you're very confident in, you don't have a starting offensive line that could bring you to the playoffs and deep into the playoffs. And we've seen injuries bite this group multiple years in a row. And as much as I like Abraham Lucas as a football player, he might be one of these guys, what the Bears did with Tevin Jenkins. He might actually be a better player inside. The Seahawks need the most amount of help inside. And I think this draft pick opens up the door to moving Lucas inside. And now you have potentially 2 really good pass protectors on the outside on an offense that's being led by an aging quarterback that is starting to lose a step. And you don't want to see Geno Smith take these hits anymore, because as you saw this year, he's not getting up as quickly as he used to. He's really getting up there. And I want to see these guys, this offensive line, really solidify what they have up front, because I think this team, similar to what you said about the Jets earlier, Greg, they have the pieces to be a very good offense. And they have great running backs in Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. They have a really good 1-2 punch at wide receiver. We just started to get a glimpse of what Smith and Njigba can do. I mean, if you can just fix that offensive line to be an 8 out of 10, I think this team could contend with anyone in the NFC West.
And it does look, and I was surprised by the firing of Grubb, but not because they did not try to run the ball. And they've got to run the football at Seattle. Another reason why they have to alleviate all of the pressure on Geno Smith. So offensive line, let's run the football better. And that's what you're going to see, I believe, at Seattle. Rebel's another guy coming off an ACL, and we know how talented he is, John, but I'm sure there are a lot of fans out there going, wait, where's Denzel Burke? I mean, where's Amos? Where's those Kansas corners? I mean, Rebel's off the ACL, and he's going to the Bucs at 19.
Well, you know, I won't get into the other 2 guys much, but Denzel Burke did not have a great year. He did not elevate himself the way, you would have liked. And so he's going to get drafted, but it's not going to be in the first round. Amos is a solid player, but Ravel he would be, without the ACL, I think a top 10 pick. That's how good I think he is. He's not only is he athletic with his skill set, but he played multiple concepts extremely well. You know, very good hard corner, very good pressing off man. He is very good at disrupting routes from various levels. He'll use a reactive press with a late jam on a vertical release. He's also effective on an offhand jam on an outside release, or a 2-hand jam to maintain leverage on an inside release. So, and these jams will come, in that 5-yard window, so you don't know when it's coming. And he's quick enough, he's athletic enough that he's big enough that he is going to be an excellent cornerback and a physical corner. That as long as the NFL keeps letting them play like they are, he's going to be very successful. He's also very good in off coverage, very good with positioning. He's got a very aggressive man turn as the route goes vertical. He's got the speed to cover deep. He's very disciplined to keep his focus on the receiver with mirror ability throughout the route. His eye discipline is tremendous, and he's got a quick break with the ball in the air. Good route recognition as a zone player. There's not a lot of weakness in this guy. The big weakness is an ACL. How quickly will he bounce back? that's going to be a thing. He will bounce off a tackle once in a while by not wrapping, which a lot of corners do. He'll lose phase sometimes, but overall I've watched a lot of him early in last year's film. I knew somebody that was coaching there, and this kid's good. That ACL injury that was suffered in practice is going to be something we've got to watch. But I still think a team is going to take a look at him, and he's going to get drafted in the first round.
Now, here's one of the surprises for me. Seeing Matthew Golden go 21, even though once we get to the 21, this area, I think there's a lot of different ways. Obviously, organizations can go talent-wise, but there are a handful of other receivers that are available here, have a little bit more name recognition. So why Matthew Golden specifically here? Give me the skinny, Dave.
He's been a playmaker for 3 years. We just didn't hear about him because he was at Houston for the first 2 years. And, yeah. Texas loses Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell to the NFL, and they bring in Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden. And like everyone, I was all about Isaiah Bond. I think I had him, if I remember correctly, as wide receiver 2 heading into the season because I love his movement traits. He is as quick and as explosive as anybody you're going to find, and he's not as small as some people make him out to be. But so I watched a ton of Texas between him and Quinn Ewers. I don't think there's a team I watched more than Texas. And every time I walked away from watching tape on these guys, Golden was just simply the better football player. He's much more physical. He's a much more competitive guy pre and post catch. I think you could do a little bit more with him. He is DJ Moore to me. I mean, the similarities these guys play with are all over the place. And, John and I have had some really good scouting-based discussions. There's nobody I like to talk to more than John if I have a question about a guy. Am I right? Am I wrong? What do you think? And, we've had some good discussions about Isaiah Bond, and there probably will be some teams that like Bond more than Golden because of the NFL upside, right? Because of the movement traits. To me, to a fault sometimes, and this is where it shows up, but this is how I feel about the player. I simply just think Golden is a week 1 contributor at the next level. He's got much better hands. I trust him in big situations to actually create a play on his own, where to me, Bond and some of these other guys are players that you need to line things up for them. They need to kind of fall in line, where Golden can be a guy that creates on his own. And that's what I liked about his tape the most.
By the way, receiver metrics like both of these guys.
Yeah.
And they're good receivers. I'm not going to discount Bond too much because he is he's got very, very good NFL upside. Yeah. But I like Golden better myself, and I did not either. I'm the same, as Dave as far as that goes.
And here we have another lineman that maybe not familiar, household name, Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M. John, talk a little bit about why you believe he could go as high as the early 20s.
Well, the thing about him is, he's one of those guys. He's a lot like Nick Scortune. I don't know if I pronounced that name right. They're similar players playing at Texas A&M, but he's a very good edge rusher. He's got a quick first step. His production was not, what you like to have in terms of, sacks, but he gets pressure on the quarterback. He's a guy that can play inside or outside. And in fact, when we first started looking at him, we felt that he was a defensive tackle, instead of an edge guy. But he's the kind of guy that he's versatile. He can play anywhere from wide 9, all the way to a 4-eye, as a defensive end, and he can play 3 technique in the nickel. So he's the kind of guy that a 3-4 team is going to look at, but a 4-3 team just as much. He can play. He can play that 5 technique. He can play that wide 9, but you can slide him inside the nickel. You can move him all along the front. And he's got a really quick first step. And, he can use a little bit more technique, I think, but he's very good on inside line stunts. And, he's got a good motor. So that's what we like about him. And, we think that, we think some team's going to find a spot for him, and he'll be a part of a really good defensive line rotation. And he can play, I think, in any scheme.
And then another player here, Dave Savion Williams from TCU, not recognizable. Hasn't been in a lot of big games this year for people to understand what kind of an intriguing prospect he is because of his size and speed combination.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is a player that I took a little bit of a leap on in the first round, but he's got traits that they just jump off the screen. And the NFL is a league of traits. 6'5", 225, carries it like it's 205. He is as explosive in 1 or 2 steps as anyone in this draft class. He doesn't have the top end speed. He might not even be below 4.5s, but at that size and his ability to get going, his explosibility, the ability to jump. He's on the Bruce Feldman freak list. I mean, that's reserved for the best athletes in the nation. It's something I read every year, and I put into my scouting notes that if you're on that, it's going to matter. In Houston, that one of the biggest issues they had all year was they could not find answers in the red zone. This is the kind of guy that, he's like a souped up version of Cordarrelle Patterson, who's kind of still in the league with Pittsburgh, former wide receiver, didn't really pan out, but he's so big, he's so physical, and he's so versatile that you could put him in the backfield. And that's what TCU did with this guy this year. He was in the backfield catching passes left and right, screen game, handing them the ball off. He's just a really physical guy that when I watch him play, I say, hey, if he's not in this offense, if he's in a more traditional offense, he gets a real weapon at the next level. But it's definitely a risky pick. And Houston is the kind of team right now they gotta take a risk at some point. They gotta find something that can really get that offense over the hump. And Williams is a guy that 24 of his 60 catches, only 24 were over 5 yards down the field, meaning it was a bunch of screens, it was a bunch of dump offs out of the backfield. But when I watch him run routes and watch him with the football, I see things that very few guys can do. So this is kind of like my risk pick here.
The thing though, that he does have good GPS speed. His GPS is in the 90th percentile, so he does have speed. His weakness is deceleration and acceleration. And Greg, you'll know this name, Alvin Harper.
Oh yeah, Dallas Cowboys. He was that missing. He was the guy that nobody talked about that would always make those big downfield plays.
That's who he is. Alvin Harper was not a route runner.
No.
And he did not catch a lot of balls, but
one route deep.
Michael Irvin did all, and he was good in the red zone. Michael Irvin did all the work, and Alvin Harper scored a lot of touchdowns. So,
yeah, you have to have one of those guys, absolutely, and that makes a lot easier for your number one.
And I digress to historical football.
That's okay.
We're going to have to do some of that over the summer.
Absolutely. Here's the other safety I was talking about, Eamon Worry out of South Carolina. Man, is this guy?
He's big.
Wow. He plays. I mean, for him to be that big and the way he plays, his athletic ability is just off the charts.
Yeah, our guy who does safeties for us, Hayden Russell. He is very happy that I put him in that top. And I didn't initially have him there, but he's a big body. He's 200, as you can see, 227 pounds. He really lays the wood. He gets downhill in a hurry, coming from a cover 4 alignment. He is your prototypical cover 4 safety, and but yet he can do more than that. He's potential big nickel because he's got decent cover skills. He can play over the top, but close to the line is where he's going to make his bones. But he'll play all over. He's not going to be a guy that is going to be limited to a box safety. He can play, he can move, he's got good speed, but he is physical. And he's quick, and he's got good hands. He reminds me of a different kind of player, but there's some Kyle Hamilton in him.
Yes.
Kyle Hamilton is more slender build, but he can lay the wood as well. So, this is a guy that, is going to be a good football player for somebody. And they can use him as a little bit of a Swiss Army knife, as kind of a nickel linebacker.
Yep.
You can play in the box a little bit. You can use him situationally, as kind of a nickel will. There's a lot you can do with a player like that.
And not many teams have players like that, which is why if you can add him to your defense, especially a good defense, he can make your defense a great defense. So, Yeah.
Everybody's playing 5 DBs, and you can't have enough defensive backs on your team. You just can't.
A couple more before we wrap up. Jack Sawyer, John. I mean, I don't know if it's true because you look at a guy's career, not his last couple of games. But I got to imagine Jack Sawyer made a little bit of money over the past month with how he came up with the huge play in the Michigan game, even though they lost. Could have been a game-saving winning play. And then, of course, made one of the big plays of the college football playoff season last week against Texas. So, yeah, he came up big at the biggest moments.
Well, the reputation that he's got is that he's limited athletically in comparison with other edge rushers, but yet, you really got to take a long look at this guy. I've watched a lot of play on him. He's got a little try-hard guy in him, and he has missed more tackles than I like, which is why I went back and forth as whether he's a guy that I would put there. But his motor is one of those nonstop motor guys who's got a really, really good football IQ. He makes plays. He can actually drop in coverage. He's got some versatility. I wouldn't be afraid to use him as a 3 technique, but I don't think that's what anybody's going to do. I think his best situation is to play like a rush linebacker in a 3-4, but yet he could also be a 4-3 defensive end. He's got a better first step than people give him credit for. It's a little inconsistent, but he's a good pass rusher. He's got a pretty good arsenal in terms of concepts. And he chases, and he's instinctive. He can, I love the way he can run an inside stunt, and I love the way he can chase across the field. He's not Abdul Carter by any stretch of the imagination, but his playing style is similar. But he's not the athlete that Abdul Carter is.
And he can make big plays in big games, which is something that you look for. So
yeah, I mean, he's an emotional player. He's a leader. He's
Yep.
He's got some things going for him intangible wise.
Yep.
Which, when push comes to shove, he might not be a first round pick, but at number 31, I think that's a spot where a team like the Eagles that loves try-hard guys, would take a look at him.
Wrapping up here at 32, Dave, is Connerly. Now, his teammate Cornelius will be at the Senior Bowl. Connerly can't, but yeah. Do you see much of a difference, like a big difference between Connerly and Cornelius?
Do you know something I don't? I think Connerly is going to the Senior Bowl.
He is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought he was an underclassman. Okay.
Yeah. They're last year they're allowing underclassmen. That's why there's so much talent.
Did. Okay. Yeah. That's good. All right.
So he'll be there. I was wondering if I'd missed something. So
all right. No, I didn't realize they made that rule last year. Okay.
I've missed something on those several times. So please help me on those.
Yeah. So talk about the two then. Talk about the difference between the teammates.
Yeah, I mean, Connerly this is a kid that was wanted by everybody coming out of high school. 5-star recruit, didn't really play his first year. And the last 2 years, he's allowed 4 quarterback hits and 2 sacks. He's got flagged 4 times this year. Just a really clean, athletic, gets his feet off the ground. He can mirror. He plays balanced. It's one of the top traits I personally look for in a pass protecting left tackle, which is what I think the Chiefs really need to start thinking a little bit deeper about than they currently are. I know they drafted Sua Matia last year, and I have 2 options for him. Hey, he's got to earn it. It was ugly at the start of the year when he did see the field, and there were some talks about him being a guard in the NFL. And they're going to lose Trey Smith in free agency this year. He's going to hit top dollar on the market, and that's another team where I think New England's going to go after a guy like that. But it's Connerly to me can be the future left tackle of this team. And it doesn't have to be right away. The Chiefs don't always draft for immediate need, but that's a hole that I think needs to be filled. They're having a really hard time figuring out stabilizing what they're doing on that side. He doesn't fit the physical profile of what Casey has gone after traditionally: size, power, tough to get around. He is slightly undersized, but he is long enough to play left tackle at the NFL level. Just not a big, powerful guy. I talked to a couple guys within Oregon organization, and they said the improvement in which he made in his power game this year compared to last was as good as they ever could have imagined. Cornelius is not half the athlete of Connerly, but he is a bigger, more physical guy. I just don't think the ceiling is there to be considered anything more than a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, when I was looking at some tape on Connerly, it looks like he's able to. It's like he gets that bear hug on you.
Yeah,
and you're done.
Yep.
You know, and it's like
great hands. Yep.
Yeah, and great feet too. It looks like. So yeah. So there you go. That's our top 32. It's our first. And again, the top 32 rankings are also out on our website, so you can check that out. We'll have links in the description for both. What's on the horizon for us here? Do we have any? Again, next week we got the Senior Bowl. So again, as I mentioned before, Dave will be there. So we're going to hope to get some live updates from him that we'll record and post here on this channel. So subscribe, like, share, to all that stuff. Comment, let us know what's on your mind. All that stuff. You know, let's get a debate going. That'd be really great. John loves debates. But yeah, what's up after that as far as postings and things of that nature? I know you guys are going to start doing some top 5 videos.
We have another guy going down there, Hayden Russell, too. And we've got some other people. Hayden's one of our scouts. And, yeah, you know, we've got some videos that were planned. You know, we're going to do some articles, you know, on some different things, too. You know, we'll have an article about the Senior Bowl. Dave and Hayden will write up their notes. You know, I'll watch. You know, what's I'll watch on TV, and I'll have some notes on some guys. I've got some other people that are down there too. So we'll put something together that'll be on the website covering the Senior Bowl. And that's probably the next big thing that's up. And then there'll be, like you said, top 5 videos, you know, from our position stacks. And those are everything's fluid right now. I mean, there's a lot of things that are still yet to be determined. But
yeah, and we'll know the entire underclassmen list in 3 days max, because that's when we get the Ohio State Notre Dame kids. That's their deadline, correct? Right. But everybody else already their deadline's passed.
Yes.
So, and we'll have that available on the website too shortly. So we'll have as much information on the Ourlads.com site. If there's anything on the site that we don't have, let us know. But we think we've done a great job of informing you. So whenever you come here, you can get as much information, a smorgasbord of draft information. The mock draft is sort of like the beginning of really getting serious about this year's draft and in the 2025 calendar year. Obviously, we're serious about the draft every year. We're already looking at the 2026 draft. I know you guys are. So anyway, we're going to call it a show. Great job, guys. It was awesome talking football with you, as always an education. And can't wait to do one of these again sometime soon.
Thank you, guys.